Hello, everybody. My name is Ken Rock. Sorry about that. I was recording a second ago. I really need to start playing these videos out so that I can see if they actually decide they want to work or not. Actually, I don't even know if it's officially recording. 1 second. Let me just double check something. No, according to this, I am officially live, and I have been live for at least 30 seconds. Sweet. So, as it says in the video, I will be going over Noodles kakazu video on him being underrated. Obviously, I'm going to try and be as unbiased to this as possible. I actually do like Noodles, so I would suggest go check out his videos. And what I have to say here isn't to hate on him, it's just I disagree with this. If you get a chance, Noodles, I'm willing to talk to you about this directly. I am curious to see your direct rebuttals to what I have to say. I've talked to Surfbone and Grim about this subject, and although they do make good points, they're not making the points which would convince me. So, if you're willing to talk to me about it, sweet. If not, and you're burned out on the subject by this point in time, that's also okay too. I just want to put my thoughts into it. And no, this isn't going to be just me just hating on this one video. So, I am going to give him his props because he does know what he's talking about when it comes to Naruto. With that being said, no more butt kissing. Let's get into this. Hopefully, this works this time.
What's going on, guys? Back again with another Naruto video. So in one of my previous videos, I made a horrific mistake and ranked the entirety of the Akatsuki. Even though it's a really good video, you should definitely go and check it out. Obviously, ranking the Akatsuki is going to be super controversial because there's so many opinions floating out there. But
yeah, that's true. And it's annoying because you can never just think what you want. You always have somebody who willing to just hate on you for it. Again, ironic considering this video, but I just said no. I don't hate him for his opinion. It's just an anime, but you know what I'm trying to say here.
But throughout that video, I made a lot of controversial rankings, many of which angered basically the entire Naruto fan base. And I had anticipated the placement of Kakazu in particular would draw out this unstoppable weeaboo rage and they would pillage.
Really, for me, it was more very disappointed with how low Sasori kind of appeared. I mean, maybe it's because everyone else is so much more powerful, but you'll see how I feel about the Akatsuki when I do my video next week on the ranking all of the Naruto characters. But until then,
pillage my Discord and comment section, and I knew the Naruto community is just not going to be okay with me putting Kakazu above characters like Itachi and Pain, mostly because Itachi and Pain are insanely powerful in their own right, but they're also...
I can see it. So, a lot of people aren't going to like this, but I could actually see Kakazu being relative to Itachi. Like, Tsukiyomi is ridiculous, but I mean, the hard sub on Kakazu kind of at least help him out a little bit there. Considering that they can fight somewhat independently from Kakazu. They don't have eyes, so I don't know how something like Tsukiyomi would affect them. Amaterasu is going to be a problem, but Itachi doesn't really have the stamina to deal with that. That's Shushino, probably going to be his biggest bet there, but if I had to guess, Itachi and Kakazu are somewhat relative. Especially if we're talking about the one that was in the Akatsuki, because he shouldn't have that K-Seam level speed and all that. Mostly because of how sick he was and all that. It's kind of like why Nagato isn't necessarily just on that level without Beast Chakra.
So really popular and fan favorite. So even if I do present like a logical and good argument for why I believe that Kakazu is stronger than them, you know, there's obviously going to be that bias towards those characters, and there's just really nothing I can do about that. So
I'm going to try and keep the pausing down to a minimum from this point on, but no, just because someone disagrees with you doesn't necessarily mean it's a bias. Sometimes they're just not convinced by your arguments. Sometimes it takes extremely good arguments to overturn something that's been agreed upon for as long as it is. A bit off topic, but that's why the scientific community is such a hard thing to overturn when it comes to stuff that's been in it for so long, is because the evidence is packed up in that favor. It's not necessarily a bias. There's probably some bias to it, but that's not necessarily what it is. And to go off and say that's what it is a little disingenuous, I'm not going to lie.
In spite of that, I still tried to make an extreme effort to put together what I consider to be a very large and convincing pool of evidence, and I addressed many of the major common and counter arguments that I believe people would try and make, but even with that, it still wasn't enough. It's obvious to me that there needed to be some more explanation as to why kakazu is considered so strong by my standards. So that's why I'm making this video, to explain why kakazu is being massively downplayed by a vast majority of the Naruto fan base, and to display the extraordinary strength of kakazu. I'll be dividing this video up into two sections. First, we'll go over the many feats and statements of Kakazu, which will then utilize to scale his powers and abilities. And in the second portion of the video, I will make an in-depth analysis of the reason many people consider Kakazu to be weak or mediocre, and then display why these beliefs are completely ignorant and a mischaracterization of Kakazu. Now that introductions are out of the way, let's go ahead and dive headfirst into the obscure side of Naruto power scaling. To begin, Kakazu's intelligence has virtually gone unnoticed by a massive portion of the Naruto fan base.
I can agree with that. Yes, I know I try to keep the positive to a minimum, but I want to give him points here because I would agree. A lot of people sleep on Kakazu when it comes to his intelligence. The man's extremely smart. There's not a lot of people who can intellectually go with Shikamaru. Yes, Shikamaru kind of outsmarts him a few times, but it's not like they weren't on par. And for those of you who want to know what I'm talking about when it comes to outsmarting him, he was able to come up with a plan to get Kakazu's blood, order for Kakashi to take him out in case everything were to go wrong. No, he wasn't anticipating the hearts probably, but at the least future planning on Shikamaru's part that Kakazu wasn't ready for. He was able to separate him and Hidan, which again shows future Shikamaru's ability to plan for future events. He was able to get him in a situation where he can get hit by Choji, which again, that's pretty impressive considering that even I'm going to agree that Choji should be slower than Kakazu. You could say he was willing to take the hit, but outside of just an assumption, that doesn't mean a whole lot for us. And even then, he still gets tagged by Kakashi. We'll get into that later, but the point is he's able to set up Kakazu in such a way that he can be hit, which doesn't take away from him because Shikamaru is extremely intelligent. Like, it's almost on the same tiers like Itachi, Madara, and Obito.
Over all of the threads I've read and the dozens of videos I've watched, the years I've spent researching and reading through the ancient texts of Naruto libraries, I have never seen anyone recognize the insane intellect of Kakazu, which is in direct support of the video's theme. Kakazu at the age of his death was 91 years old. One of the oldest Naruto characters in the series. He has battled against hundreds, possibly thousands of enemies, participated in multiple...
Going to pause this for a second. Yeah, that's true. He's battled, well, I don't know if we can necessarily say hundreds. This says anything. But he's no, he was in the war. This is all irrelevant, but yeah, for the sake of this, I'll say he's battled hundreds of people. Definitely got the battle experience, that's for sure.
Multiple wars and conflicts, and overall possesses overwhelming battle experience that is almost unrivaled by any other character in the series. Kakazu,
I would say it is unrivaled by any other. The guy's lived through 3 wars. Wait, was it 3? The original war, and there was a second war with Toby. Yeah, you lived through the 3 Great Wars. Was there 3 wars? I don't know if there's 3 wars. Holy shoot, why can't I remember how many wars there were in Naruto? At that point, maybe there was only 2? No, because for some reason, I think one of the biggest jokes for that was, for me, is always they just skipped a number and just went straight to the 4th Great Ninja War. So I don't know. The point is, he's definitely the most battle experienced out of all of them. There's no way to take that away from him. The man's lived through every major war that we've known about from that point on.
Kakazu was even present during the era of Hashirama, the first Hokage. Not only was he alive during this reign, but he was even sent on a mission to assassinate Hashirama. Kakazu, of course, did not succeed in this mission and barely made it out alive, but I will address why this doesn't affect the scaling for Kakazu in the next section of the video. Kakazu himself has a very formulaic and methodical approach to every encounter. In the third data book, Kakazu is described as being capable of adapting to each of his opponents and forming strategies on the spot in a preposterously short amount of time.
That's something to keep in mind. That statement alone. So let's not forget that it's something that we are arraigned with. That he's able to analyze and strategize on with his opponent on the spot. So let's not forget that.
This is shown to us in Kakazu's encounter with Team Asuma. After hours, possibly days of preparation from Shikamaru, arguably the smartest character in the entire series of Naruto,
Why is that the one where you sit there and give him the credit for being the best in that category? No, he's not the smartest character in Naruto. Not his battle experiences. He's not as much smarter than the other characters as Kakazu would be battle experience over the other characters, if that makes sense. There's a bigger gap between Kakazu's battle experience over every other character and would be Shikamaru between the other smartest characters. So I don't know. I find that a weird one to say.
He who possesses an IQ over 200 as a child created a plan to capture and defeat Kakazu. Shikamaru set up a surprise ambush in Kakazu's path and began the fight by throwing kunai-rigged explosive tags at Kakazu. The intention of Shikamaru's explosive tags was to distract Kakazu and Hidan from the actual threat of his shadow possession. And amongst the kunai thrown, Shikamaru hid a fake explosive tag on one of the kunai in an attempt to trick and capture both of the immortals in his shadow possession. It was in the midst of this blast and smoke that Kakazu immediately recognized what was happening and hid one of his arms and hearts under the ground, which he would later use to circumvent Shikamaru's shadow possession.
To be fair, you could argue that at that point in time, they'd never actually seen most of what Kakazu was capable of, so there's no way for Shikamaru to have planned for that. And if Shikamaru had known, he could have planned for it, and that would have made him able to capture him. I don't know, could have, should have, didn't, but it's definitely something to keep in mind here.
Possession attack and battle plan. This is the only time in the entire series that one of Shikamaru's strategies has directly failed. Kakazu, with no preparation whatsoever, was instantly able to deflect and defeat a premeditated plan from Shikamaru and save both himself and Hidan in the process. The reason
Again, it definitely looks good on paper, but when you think about the fact that he knows how the Shadow Possession Jutsu works, especially since he's seen at that point, considering the panel that you had shown earlier with him being able to adapt to strategize on the spot, with that information ahead of time, it definitely would have helped him. With the fact that Shikamaru doesn't know almost nothing about what Kakazu is able to do, it definitely wouldn't. It definitely looks different once you lay it all out, doesn't it?
Kakazu was able to do what so many before had failed was because throughout the countless years of fighting, Kakazu had experienced numerous nearly fatal encounters, which ingrained a prudent behavior within himself. Every fight, every battle, every technique and strike would be carefully calculated and thought out well in advance before execution, which is one of the many reasons Kakazu is so successful in combat. The development of his expert analytical skills even allows him to gauge the level of power of his opponents simply by looking at them. This is actually how he judges whether or not it's worth taking one of his opponent's hearts. That's a part of the video I'll cover later, but Kakazu's intellect is something that many people do not take into consideration, but he's actually one of the most battle intelligent, oriented, and wit-based fighters in the entire show. I mean, how many characters have we seen capable of outdoing one of Shikamaru's plans? He's arguably the best contriver in the entire series. I don't believe anything else needs to be said about this, so now we will go.
To be fair, I can't think of a whole lot of Shikamaru's actual fights. I just can't. And one of the biggest problems here is I know this wasn't outsmarted, but Tamari was able to outdo his Shadow Possession. Which, I mean, that wasn't a smart, that was a feat of power. But that means the power difference between that of Kakazu and Shikamaru was actually less than the power difference between KCM to Tamari and Shikamaru at that point in time. But that's definitely something to keep in mind for later.
We will go ahead and segue into Kakazu's strength and attack potency. Starting off, wow. Kakazu was casually able to dismantle Asuma and his entire squad. Casually harm.
I love that scene. I know it's not meant to be funny, but that's just hilarious how he just sucker punches Choji that many times and just sends them flying. I have to gift for that later. That's amazing.
Harming Asuma when Hidan got into trouble. Hidan himself was competing with Asuma in combat and was eventually able to even kill him. This is impressive
Yeah.
because Kakazu is stated by Kakashi to be stronger of the two, and Asuma also states that both Kakazu and Hidan are stronger than him, to confirm everything I have said. Asuma himself is an elite Jonin who's described in the third data book as being on par with Kakashi, and is also stated to be the best close quarters combat fighter in the entire Leaf Village.
I don't know if I can accept that one though. Uh, better than Mike Guy, better than Drunken Fist Rock Lee, better than the third Hokage. I guess Dry isn't technically in the Leaf at that point in time. Okay, Kakashi with a Sharingan is still questionable. Outside of them, then fine, I'd accept it, but I don't know. I don't know.
After the death of Asuma, Team Asuma seeks revenge and gains the aid of Kakashi as their squad leader. During this battle, Kakazu casually overpowers Kakashi as his water-style jutsu was unable to cancel out Kakazu's wind-enhanced fire jutsu. Kakashi's most powerful chakra nature is lightning style, and Kakazu was even able to stalemate Kakashi's strongest lightning style technique, the Raikiri, or otherwise known as the Lightning Blade. This is impressive because throughout the entire run of Naruto, Kakashi's Lightning Blade has never failed a single time except when it engaged Kakazu's attack. The same Lightning Blade was even able to pierce the 6 pads of pain in the likes of Obito.
No, it's failed before. I think Pain's Chibaku Tensei was able to cancel it out. He usually uses the Chidori more on a sparing level, if we are to be fair. I can't think of a whole lot of Kakashi fights either. That's weird. Part 1, who do we got? We got Zabuza. He uses it like the second time. We have. Shoot. Okay. Yeah, no, I know I'm not taking credit. I'm taking away from Kakashi's lightning blade. It's definitely one of the more powerful jutsus. It's not something most ninjas are able to deal with, but yeah, I can think of at least one other category where it's been failed, and Pain was able to cancel out with the Chakra Tensei. So outside of anything else, it's irrelevant, but I'll comment something later if I think of anything.
Even this is by no means the most impressive scaling for Kakazu's strength. In order to go into this, I need to explain the narrative intentions and goals of the Akatsuki itself in order to give a reasonable and convincing argument for Kakazu's attack potency. The entire purpose of the Akatsuki second generation is to find and capture the 9 Biju in order to resurrect the 10 tails. Obviously, in order to capture a Biju, you would be required to have some kind of method of dealing with these monstrous beasts of nature, or else you'll literally just get eaten or obliterated. It's because of this that Pain carefully chose every Akatsuki member who he believes has the skill set to take on a Biju. This is directly stated in the third data book, as Pain believes a pair of Akatsuki members will lose neither to a Biju nor Jinchuriki. This is important.
And that ends up not being true, though. So, I mean, a lot of them lose to I guess they don't really lose in pairs most of the time. So yeah, but you know what? I'm gonna grant that one. That's fair enough. That was a bad pause on my part. Sorry. Continue.
This is important because obviously Kakazu is a member of the Akatsuki, sent to capture Biju, and has succeeded in capturing both the Seven Tails and Two Tails Jinchurikis.
Well, to be fair, that's anime only, but I'm not gonna go down that route. I will accept your use of the anime. By the way, one of the best scenes ever with Fu. I love it. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, for those of you who are wondering how I can make a mispause like that, it's because I'm not going off a script. I'm sure it's obvious, but I'm just going to do scripts for those of you who are new here. I'm not good at reading. I'd rather go off the top of my head. If I say something wrong, I will correct it in a video later, or hey, if you want to come talk to me in my Discord, I will put that in the link below. Come talk to me there. We'll settle any problems that go on with what I say. And continue.
The data book also states in the same image that the Akatsuki are simply stronger than Jinchuriki. So it's reasonable to say that Kakazu himself has the capability of dealing with Jinchuriki. So obviously Kakazu can take on Hagoromo and the Jinchuriki.
Would that mean that Hidan's now more powerful than all the Jinchuriki? I mean, he's powerful, but might have to press X on that one to doubt it.
The Ten Tails. This would scale him above the vast majority of the Jinchuriki, bar like Naruto, who casually scales higher than the other Biju. It can be argued that by the term strong, they're not referring to physical strength, but rather their overall combat ability. But Kakazu himself is a strength-based fighter who generally opts to fight opponents head-on with his brute strength or powerful ninja.
Well, no, he's not a brute force. That's one of those things I never will understand. A lot of people say that Kakazu is just brute force. No, he's not. He's very tactical about the way he fights. His big thing is his ability to combine his jutsus and all that. Yes, they make his jutsu more powerful and overwhelming, but it's not like he's just doing it out of this ability is just more powerful. Like, he's being strategic with how he does things. Like you pointed out earlier, like with his ability to implant one of his hearts into the ground to free himself from what Shikamaru was doing, that's not a brute force tactic. That's not something I would expect for somebody who uses brute force. That's pure strategy, and we see it within the new ninjutsu again. He combines his most powerful ninjutsu in such a way that he gets even more powerful ninjutsu. He's able to play dead in order to trick people so he can get the jump on him. He does this against Kakashi when he thinks he's about to take out Hidan with the Raikiri. I think there's a part towards the end of the fight where he's able to trick Kakashi and them, so he's able to pin them down with his tendrils, and he's about to destroy them with false darkness. Now, whether or not Kakashi was able to get out of that and save them, it's all up to what you think, but no, it's not just brute force. There's some brute force to it, but that's not all it is, so that's
ninjutsu. This is why his ninjutsu or his strength would inherently have to scale to these biju, or he wouldn't have a method to dealing with them. There's also
no, it just has to damage him. That doesn't necessarily mean they scale to him. Naruto can hurt Zabuza, doesn't mean he necessarily scales to Zabuza. And yes, I know there's a big time difference there, but that's irrelevant. Sasuke in part 1 was able to hurt Orochimaru. He's definitely not relative to him. Konohama was able to hurt one of the paths of pain. That doesn't necessarily make him relative to the pains. Sasuke didn't really hurt the Raikage, did he? But you get what I'm going with here. And one of Kakazu's biggest things, and I know we'll get into this later, is his immortality. The fact that you can't really take him down without taking out all of his hearts, and his ability to harden up his body, which are both things that could be used to catch someone off guard if they're not ready for. And even in most real fights, if you're caught off guard in such a way that you're not expecting, it could be the difference between winning and losing a fight. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. And with the fact that I just pointed out that his biggest thing isn't just necessarily brute force, but strategizing as well, which would complement his battle experience beautifully, might I add, which would make him even more deadly or dangerous, depending on how you want to phrase that. It makes sense for Kakazu. So,
also no way for him to bypass his opponent's durability, so he is basically forced to literally beat down Biju with pure power. The Biju themselves are capable of creating...
I like the physical image of Kakazu just pinning a Biju and just punching it in the head until it just stops moving.
Multi-continental levels of force with their Biju bombs, and the Eight Tails is able to withstand that same level of force as he took one of his own Biju bombs to his chest, after also tanking attacks from the likes of the Ten Tails. The other Biju are also able to...
So, but the Ten Tails is far beyond multi-continental, though. Like, are you just going to sit there and say that now just Kakazu just has planet surfing levels of durability? Do the tailed beasts now just have that level of attack potency because they're able to take that hit? No. Just yeah.
Able to damage the Eight Tails and Killer Bee with their melee attacks, which suggests that they're able to output a similar amount of force with them as well. Specifically, the Seven Tails Jinchuriki was even able to melt the Eight Tails skin. Biju are also stated to become more powerful when they are given a Jinchuriki to channel their power.
Sorry, I felt a pause. Melting isn't necessarily an AP thing. That's more of a Hack's ability. Acid doesn't necessarily have the same attack power as like... Oh, I'm not going to go with... That was way too extreme. doesn't necessarily have the same attack potency as a bullet, but it's going to destroy stuff that bullets can't. That's because it's able to get past their ability. This is something you actually acknowledge within your own video later on. So it's weird how you would ignore that fact here now. One of the biggest things that I probably should have pointed out by now is, yes, they were able to withstand Biju Damas, but that doesn't necessarily mean that other attacks that are weaker than that can't harm them to some degree. And there's one thing we know about every single time Kakazu and Hidan have fought a Biju, it definitely took them a while to actually win that fight. So it's not like it breaks any rules to say that they just were able to wear down their opponent. It's speculation, absolutely, but I think it's fair speculation. Sploosh.
Power. Yugito specifically was able to gain mastery over Madatabi at an extremely young age, yet Kakazu and Hidan were still able to defeat her. This means that Kakazu would have multi-continental attack potency.
There was a lot of assumptions there, though. Like, again, you're assuming that just because they're able to take Biju Damas doesn't mean they can't be taken out with attacks that are a bit weaker than that. If anything, I'd say, I'm not going to sit here and say he's wall level, because that's clearly not true. He's large building level? I'd say large building level. I can't think of too many characters. Yeah, I'd go about large building, skyscraper level. I don't know. He's not multi-continental, that's for sure. If I really have to push it, he's continental, but not multi. Not multi. Woo!
Next, we'll quickly go over Kakazu's durability. We never get to see the battle, even if there was one between the Seven Tails and Kakazu, as it is only briefly mentioned in the anime, but we do get to see some of the fight with Yugito. During this encounter, we see Kakazu withstand a fireball that blows up at the compound he and Hidan were trapped in. This blast was later shown to tear apart the city and partially obliterate a significant portion of a nearby mountain. We also see Kakazu tank a direct paw strike from...
He tanked the paw strike, that's for sure, but he didn't tank the fireball. In fact, it's weird that Kakazu got hit and Hidan was able to avoid it. I mean, you could argue that the fireball doesn't scale to Madatabi, but it'd be weird to have a range attack that's slower than you. I think that kind of beats the purpose, because if you can dodge someone at close range and they launch a far range attack that's slower than them, that kind of beats the purpose. I don't know, maybe there's some benefit to it. I can't think of any. Not one.
From a full Madatabi avatar. This is impressive for the reasons I mentioned earlier about the Biju being able to output similar levels of force of their Biju bombs into their standard attacks.
I haven't seen any proof of that, though. The only evidence you have for that is because they were able to hurt each other, but just because the Biju Damas do massive damage to the tailed beast. So it's obviously not their minimum output of how much damage they can take. So just because they're able to be hurt by another attack doesn't mean anything. And the two weapons that you showed were completely different force outputs, stabbing and melting. Melting isn't even one that requires high AP like I demonstrated earlier, so I should say some more nice things. I'm trying.
Logically, Kakazu must be able to withstand at least a comparable amount of energy or damage, otherwise his bodies would break apart from the strain and automatic counterforce whenever he exerts himself. So his
I mean, you're not wrong, but if we're going to add the laws of physics into this, I don't want to think about what would happen to Kakashi's arms every single time he creates the lightning blade. Especially if he were to stay stationary. That's...
His durability would be around multi-continental as well. Kakazu also states during the Shikamaru fight that he is invulnerable to physical attacks, which means Kakazu believes he is so durable that he could take on anything else in the verse without being damaged. This is, of course, only in reference to Kakazu's knowledge, but we do know Kakazu has gone toe-to-toe and into melee combat with literal Biju in Perfect Jinchuriki. This means that
I actually no problem with that. I actually am going to grant him that. And the fact that he's able... And I'm going to assume that this is just them not trying to spoil Diamond Morph, but that's irrelevant. His Diamond Morph definitely does allow him to tank a lot more physical attacks than a lot of people are willing to give him, which I don't understand why. To that, I would say it is Kakasu downplay and a bias against him to that degree, because we've never really seen anything get around his Dynamorph once it's up. The only way around it is to get it before it gets up. So I have no problem with this.
That Kakazu doesn't believe a Biju nor a Jinchuriki can physically harm him at all. Now, normally I would say this might be some form of ego, but Kakazu really doesn't have an ego. He doesn't really hype himself up in the rest of the series, so it would be really out of character for him just to randomly sprout it at this time. And also, he has a bunch of other supporting evidence to suggest his durability scales with Biju as well, so I think this is pretty consistent. Moving on to speed, this is where a vast majority of the controversy takes place, so buckle in for a ride. Almost no one takes into consideration how fast Kakazu was during the Kakashi fight and how fast Kakazu would have needed to be in order to react and combat Matatabi's paw strike. I briefly went over this in my Akatsuki ranking video, which you should go and check out after you're done watching this one. Kakazu was casually able to blitz.
I will agree. Go check that out. It's definitely not a bad video. Yep, go do. Yep.
Kakashi while prone on the ground, and he did so right in front of him when Kakashi's Sharingan and Lightning Blade were activated, both of which...
I know he wasn't right in front of him. I think he was behind him, but ignoring all things, one of the biggest things that, and you acknowledge this too, which makes it weird, but just because you're able to see and perceive someone doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to react to them. Like, your mind's not going to be focused on them. Like, your ability to focus on a person definitely changes a whole lot. He thought Kakazu was dead. He thought Kakazu was dead, so I mean, let's be fair here.
Of which amplify his speed. This is impressive because the same Kakashi was capable of fighting on par with the paths of pain. This would mean that Kakazu possesses superior speed to the paths that Kakashi was comparable to. This, of course...
No, so... Big problem here. One, Kakashi, and I know you bring this up with, we pointed this out earlier, where he's able to, it takes 2 lightning blades in order to steal out one of Kakazu's attacks, one of his combo attacks, so 2 attacks for 2. Irrelevant. But he's able to go from one side of the battlefield to another, which would have been greater than what Kakazu, distance between Kakashi and Hidan. This would support that the idea that Kakashi is actually relative to Kakazu in speed. And I'm going to disagree with the pain stuff as well, because you got to remember, he was controlling 5 other bodies. I don't know about you, but that'd be similar to like a puppet master controlling 5 different puppets. That's definitely going to slow them down a bit. Maybe a little bit, but it's definitely a huge difference. And all of them are seeing through each other's eyes. You got to imagine that's going to be somewhat confusing on the person controlling them. Yes, he has an experience. You don't ever see him struggle with it, but that's probably because he has that experience.
Of course, similar to earlier, is less impressive than Kakazu's speed feat of blocking a strike from Yugito. Yugito during the War Arc, whilst possessed by Obito, was capable of clashing with base Killer B. B also states that he had apparently...
She does have the Sharingan and Rinnegan. As you said, and I know it's not the real Sharingan and Rinnegan, they're projections. But even you would admit that it gave them their visual prowess. And that's kind of what those 2 things are. Even if I say they don't have the Genjutsu of the Sharingan and all the Rinnegan abilities, it means they still have the Link Vision and the ability to precog what their opponents are about to do, which are definitely going to help out with combat in this category. I can ignore all other factors, which could theoretically be said to make it more powerful, and it's still going to help. Also, that was 2 on... Let's see, they had the 2 to... Because they didn't have the 1-tails. They had 2 to 7? So that's like 6 opponents that they're fighting. And Obito, who's somewhere in the background, he wasn't exactly fighting at that moment in time, but that's still something that they'd have to worry about, that extra pressure. Which, again, in a real fight, when you're thinking about other people who could join the fight, that's definitely going to slow you down as well. So all things considered, I don't think they're relative there. Also, that's base B.
Times before when she was alive, and in the Naruto art book, it is stated that B looked up to her as a...
The design was based on a character called Fudamata, which is essentially a cat that has grown second tail after living a very long life. No, a very long time. Yugito is a very high-ranking Kanoichi, and even Killer Bee gives her a lot of respect. That says nothing about her power. Let's see what you have to say.
The shinobi. There are multiple valid interpretations of this statement that do not necessarily upscale Yugito, but I believe it is consistent with the other information provided to say that she was a comparable shinobi to Killer Bee. This would mean
The second image you put up was I got the image of the two tails from the idea of having a two-tailed cat. Your lifespan, Yugito was a high-ranking female shinobi that even Killer Bee looked at. Yeah, none of these say that she's relative to Bee, though. Naruto will probably never not look up to people like Kakashi, Jiraiya, them. That doesn't mean they're relative to Hokage Naruto with the Nine Tails, Berry Mode, and Sage 6 Paths mode all active. Dull mode can be active. No, but you get what I mean. Just because you respect someone doesn't mean anything. Like, even the two images that you're showing me don't upscale Yugito. It just means that she was respected. And along with what I said earlier, there's nothing to say that she is relative. Because the only time we ever see her fight, it's very questionable if she even if it's relative there to begin with. And I don't think it's fair to use questionable material for this. So,
Kakazu has at least combat reaction speed relative to base B. This is impressive because B has a massive array of speed feats throughout his run, some of which include blitzing all of Team Taka, keeping up with KCM Naruto, saving KCM Naruto from the Raikage, catching up to KCM Naruto after going for a potty break, fighting on par with Edo Itachi, who is also comparable to KCM Naruto, and intercepting Minato's attack from the Raikage. Moreover,
yes. Yes, I will say that B is definitely relative to those characters, but you have no link back to B. The only two things that you have to B, one is extremely questionable, the other says nothing about her being relative. So with that being said, you'd have to come up with a better link for this to even make sense. There is none. In fact, it's more reasonable to say Kakazu's on par with the people who he's fighting at that point in time at speed. He gets tagged by Naruto once, almost gets tagged by him earlier on. He gets lucky with the jutsu failing. Kakashi is able to go hand to hand with him, but even ignoring that, Choji is able to get the smack on him and force him to have to defend himself. Shikamaru is able to hit him with the puddle lightning combination, which I do believe happens in the manga because that's how he saves his friends. He's able to hit him with a kunai. Tabi's able to strike him, which again has no actual link back to B. So I think Asuma, like even I'll have to go back and read, but I think even Asuma was able to trade brief blows with him. Kakazu's not against killing. And yet again, at that point in time, he was just trying to capture him. So, I don't know. That one's questionable, but the point is, there's definitely a lot more to say that he's more relative to the people who's fighting at that point in time than the war characters. So, unless you have a better link, I'm going to continue. Hello,
over the Raikage is capable of blitzing MS Sasuke during the Kage Summit and is able to perform the Lariat in conjunction with B at the speed of light. He also considered himself to be the fastest shinobi alive after Minato died. It is also stated in the fourth data book that he boasts speed not inferior to the Yellow Flash. Obviously, KCM Naruto blitzed the same Raikage, proving him wrong, and B is comparable to him in base, so he's just actually wrong on that. In short, Kakazu, through scaling to Yugito, should be comparable in speed to B, who is faster than the Raikage and on par with KCM Naruto. This will be the final section of the first part of the video, and it will end my scaling for Kakazu. This script is already extremely long, and I would like to finish it as soon as possible, so I'm going to briefly cover each of Kakazu's major abilities. Kakazu has master of all 5 chakra natures and can emit devastating attacks over a large area. He can also combine these chakra natures to form a more deadly jutsu. Kakazu's biology is completely composed of steel threads that he has complete manipulation over and can use.
I thought they were chakra threads. Hold on 1 second. I have that data book scanned somewhere. Hold on. Time out. Time the fuck out. Is this irrelevant? Absolutely. Do I care? No. Let's see. I do not see any confirmation or debunk on if these things are made of steel. Okay.
And utilize them in numerous ways, such as grappling opponents and even healing characters by sewing them together. This sewing can apparently even reattach body parts and still allow them to be fully functional, which makes Kakazu actually a pretty useful medical ninja. Kakazu has an Earth-style
Hell
jutsu
yeah.
named Diamond Morph, which in the data book is described as a versatile jutsu, capable of increasing the destructive force of unarmed attacks, and also as a defensive mechanism capable of hardening the skin to raise Kakazu's overall durability. The only downside of this jutsu is that whichever body part is hardened becomes immobile.
Oh,
Kakazu himself
yep,
is
I
a
was about
part
to
of
say
the
that.
immortal duo with Hidan, as he was able to extend
Sorry,
his
that's why I paused
lifespan
it. I
by
was going to say
stealing the
that
hearts of
too.
other shinobi. This is how he's capable of utilizing all 5 chakra natures, as they are the natures of his other hearts. These hearts also have their own bodies, own consciousness, and can act autonomously from Kakazu. This is how he was able to avoid Shikamaru's shadow possession, as he buried his threads along with one of his hearts into the ground, and then used that heart to free himself from the possession. Kakazu is also an extremely skillful shinobi, as mentioned earlier, and is adept in numerous fighting styles. This is apparent as
Would that mean that those masks are about as vulnerable as the hearts are when they're not in his body? I don't know. Something to think about. If they're made of steel, then that definitely wouldn't help out. But again, I don't have any confirmation that they are made of steel. So last I checked, those tentacles are jutsu. So I would guess they're made of like some sort of chakra, but that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Organic with chakra? I don't know. They're not made of steel. I don't believe that.
Kakazu was not only an elite shinobi, but was also the strongest samurai from his village during his younger days, which would
Well,
mean he is skillful in the ways of both the ninja and samurai. The entire composition of the Akatsuki is made up of S-class ninja who aren't really contested by anyone lesser than elite jonin and kage from other villages, so it's safe to say that Kakazu is an extremely skilled and versatile fighter with a plethora of dangerous hacks and abilities. Now, for this section of the video, as I stated earlier, I will be addressing the ridiculous amount of misconceptions and beliefs that surround Kakazu and explain why these so-called anti-feats are not anti-feats and easily explained within the
why
narrative
is your
of the
meat
story
see-through?
itself. Kakazu's speed is by far the most heavily contested aspect of my scaling, so I suppose I should get this out of the way first and give an explanation as to why Kakazu should scale to characters like Bee and Yugito. So to
Okay.
explain in the speed section, we directly saw Kakazu block an attack from perfect Jinchuriki Yugito, so obviously Kakazu's combat reaction speed is quick enough to block attacks from Yugito. We
Okay.
later see an Edo Yugito fight on par with Killer Bee during the war, which is super impressive for Yugito, which of course would then secondarily scale Kakazu based on
It's
the feat mentioned
questionable.
before. The biggest issue when
Extremely
discussing this
questionable.
line of scaling is that there is a common misconception that the Jinchuriki speed are being amped by Obito. The evidence used to support this are the statement from Naruto where he points out that Jinchuriki are using the Rinnegan shared
For the sake of argument, I'm actually going to ignore that idea. But
vision and the movement tracking from the Sharingan. People use this statement to say that the Jinchuriki have the actual Rinnegan and Sharingan, and then try to say those dojutsu amp speed, therefore they're faster. I can't believe I'm having to explain this, but those Jinchuriki don't have actual Sharingan or Rinnegan. They have a
well, no, it's helping them track it. I'm looking right at the banner right now. It's that Sharingan. That's how they're able to track us so closely. Dark color powers are enhancing their Jinchuriki abilities. They can use their shared vision to time their attacks to their greatest advantage. So I don't think they're necessarily getting faster, but I think they are able to react far better than what they would be able to, which would increase reaction time, which would overall help their ability. There's 6 of them, which all have a Rinnegan projected. No, it's not a real Rinnegan, but we do know that they are able to share their link vision because none of the other Pains had real Rennegans, and they still had that ability. And I guess you could say the Sharingan might not be real. More likely it isn't, and that it won't have its visual prowess, but I don't know. That's what you have to say on the Sharingan.
projection of the Sharingan or Rinnegan, which only grants them the visual properties of the dojutsu, or at least from
Yeah, like I said earlier, and yes, I'll admit I've seen this video more times than I probably should, so I already knew you were going to say that. But yes, if we're going to grant the Sharingan its visual prowess and nothing else, no genjutsu or anything like that, it has the tracking ability, which would also overall enhance the ability to react to things, which overall even greatly enhances their ability to deal with attacks that are on their way, just like the Rinnegan. So again, it's not fair. It'd be like going back in time to refight a fight that you've already been into and memorizing every punch that was ever taken. You're not necessarily faster than that person, but you're just able to react to stuff that's going to happen because you know what's going to happen. It's not greater in speed and all that. And even if you were slower than the person, like by a good degree, having that information is vital in a fight. If you know everything that's going to happen, then you're just going to have that overall advantage.
From what we know. Obviously, there aren't 6 extra Rinnegan and 6 extra Sharingan just lying around ready for modern.
Might be 6 extra Sharingan. Rinnegan, no, but maybe Sharingan.
An Obito to use so that they can surgically transplant them into the Jinchuriki. This is proven later when Naruto removes the rods from the Jinchuriki and the projections fade away. The only thing we can derive from this statement is that the reaction speed and surrounding perception that Jinchuriki have has been enhanced to an unknown degree. So yes, I will agree Yugito's mental reaction speed in this scenario has been enhanced, but as shown in the beginning of the series, all the way back to Lee and Sasuke's confrontation during the tuning exams, simply having the mental reaction time to see attacks does not mean you will be able to physically react to them. We see Yugi.
Yeah, but we also see it with like Haku and with Sasuke versus like the fight that you showed with Naruto. Like he ups the Sharingan power. He's able to react to that Naruto just fine. He's able to react to Haku just fine when he awakens the Sharingan. So yes, there's evidence for both of these things. And to sit there and say, well, just it's unquantifiable, therefore we can't use it. No, you have to keep that in mind. And that's why I say it's too questionable. I'm not outright dismissing it, but it's so questionable. I need some more proof to back it up, and there's just none that exist. It's an outlier. I'm just going to say it. It's more of an outlier than it is consistent.
Yugito is clearly able to physically keep up with B regardless of her reaction speed. She's able to run and move alongside him. She's able to intercept B and Naruto. She's able to clash with them at multiple points, which means her physical combat and travel speed is on the level of B and Casey and Naruto. The third statement is the other part of this page where it is stated by
Sakura is also able to travel alongside Naruto and them. So what, is she just relative to them now too? No, like travel speed doesn't have anything to do with combat speed. I know if you can run and throw a punch, then your travel speed's relative, but no, you know what I mean. There's a difference between traveling from a location and actually standing and battling. Just because there's a brief period where you're able to do both doesn't mean that the two are now just relative or one's just massively greater. That's ridiculous, and you know it is.
Stated by the Eight Tails that the Jinchuriki abilities are being enhanced by their ocular powers.
Yeah.
This statement in particular is rather ambiguous because we don't know which abilities are being enhanced by the ocular powers. So once again, it's impossible to pinpoint speed as the thing being enhanced. If you keep reading, you can...
Again, that's fair, but that's why I said I'm not going to use it. It's way too, it's way too questionable. That's why I would never use that as an argument. But with that being said, with the fact that it's questionable, I don't think it's fair for you to use it either without some sort of other backing to prove that it's consistent. And again, I just don't see it.
You can see that Yuki is directly referring to their combination attacks and is only saying that they're able to perform combination attacks better due to their tracking and shared vision. This has already been addressed.
I don't see the word combination in there.
As having better reaction speed and area perception, so it doesn't directly correlate to physical movement at all. This is also not taken into account that these Jinchuriki are under Edo Tensei, which severely nerfs you and is one of the hardest nerfs in the entire series. Madara, while under the Edo Tensei, achieved Hashirama cells, the Rinnegan, and on top of that got revived and acquired Hashirama Sage mode and was still not at full power. This isn't even taken into account.
Yeah, but Madara is ridiculously powerful. Both Madara and Hashirama are just ridiculous level of just absolute power. So I don't think it's fair to say that he was massively nerfed before everyone's massively nerfed. Otherwise, poor Hidan. I can't even remember his name anymore. The demon mist of the demon mist ninja. Sabusa. So I don't know why I wanted to call him Kakazu. or Kasama. Zabuza and Hidan would have had no chance in the war if that were true. It's definitely depending on the person. So we just can't assume anything without any proof on how much weaker they would be.
Count that Mato's Edo Tensei was the best made Edo Tensei on the entire battlefield, as Kabuto specifically tried to resurrect him to full power, unlike all of the other Edo Tensei, and it was still weaker than his prime after undergoing like 4 different amps. For people to think that the projection of this Rinnegan and Sharingan is going to increase these Jinchuriki speed to an extent that it would surmount the nerf given by the Edo Tensei is actually crazy to me. Kakazu scales and fights a prime alive perfect Jinchuriki Yugito. There's absolutely no way you can say he does not scale to the Edo Yugito during the war arc. Now that that rant is out of the way, I want to quickly go over a few more arguments people try and downplay Kakazu with. How is Kakazu Biju level when Kakashi and base Naruto were able to damage him? Firstly, Kakashi was only able to damage Kakazu because he ambushed him from behind and he used a lightning style Raikiri, which his earth style diamond armor is weak to. If you ever played a
You're right, but 2 problems here. One, you openly admit multiple times that Naruto isn't like Dragon Ball. Just because your guard is down doesn't mean anything as far as your durability. So that's coming back to bite you here, I guess. And yes, but that only really applies to his ability to get around the Diamond Morph, though. So if the Diamond Morph wasn't there, he would still be damaged by Kakashi. I don't know what to say.
Played a Pokemon game and understand the mechanic behind the typing system, this is virtually the same with nature transformations in Naruto. Lightning is strong against Earth in this case, therefore Lightning style wins. It's not because
that doesn't necessarily mean that it always wins. A Earth style jutsu can overpower a Lightning style if it's more powerful. And remember, that's the whole thing here that we're going with. It's the idea that he just underrated power. But according to this, no, his jutsu would still be weaker than that of the Lightning Blade, or at least relative to it. And that's definitely not multi-continental, for sure. Like, he's not beating a Biju with that thing. You could argue that to size, but
because Kakazu is simply weaker than Kakashi. Naruto was also only able to damage Kakazu by using the Rasen Shuriken, which attacks on such a minute level that it affects the cells directly. This means that the blades of the Rasen Shuriken are so small that they would simply go between the level of conventional durability and would pass through the defense of most characters. The third Raikage is a character who's able to withstand the Rasen Shuriken, which suggests that he possesses cellular level defense with his lightning armor. This support
I think that just means the Lightning Armor is just probably better than the Dynamorph is, at least at that point. But yeah, I'll give you that. If Naruto had hit him with a regular Rasengan, I don't think that would have been the thing. I think he needed a Rasen Shuriken to do it. So yeah, fair enough.
Supported by the fact that at the end of the fight, when we see Kakazu, his body is not completely obliterated and is still intact. This would mean Kakazu's actual body was never destroyed or beaten, but rather his internal cells were obliterated. This is literally confirmed by Tsunade as well, when she directly states that the Rasen Shuriken functions more like poison rather than physical trauma, which means Kakazu was physically durable enough to tank the actual blast of the Rasen Shuriken, but lacked the cellular level defense to survive the minute blades penetrating his cells. Saying Kakazu wasn't durable enough to tank this attack would be the equivalent of saying Itachi wasn't durable enough to tank his sickness. It doesn't function like...
I don't know if the two go hand in hand, but yeah, it's definitely... No, because he definitely wasn't durable enough to take the attack. Just because he needed a more unconventional way of dealing with the attack as far as durability doesn't diminish the durability. Especially considering everything else that's been gone throughout this video. With just because his Diamond has a weakness to the lightning style doesn't mean his base body could take it. He actually has to use Diamond to protect against people like Choji, Kunai, and all that. Which you can say that's just on instinct, but I would need to see some proof in order for that to be worth anything. But I mean, yeah, if we're talking Dynamorph, he's definitely on that level. But he's definitely not durable enough to take the Rasen Shuriken. Yes, I know it attacks on the cellular level, but again, that's irrelevant because he doesn't have that level of durability, like the Raikage, which again has that level of durability. You'd admitted it.
like a standard attack, it doesn't function with brute force. It functions with minute blades that bypass conventional durability altogether, and those with cellular level defense are the only ones able to avoid being harmed by it. Another common argument people try and make is that Pain is the leader of the Akatsuki, and there is a statement that even the most notoriously strong members obey him. This
I
statement
don't like
doesn't
that one.
necessarily mean anything, considering that the strong members are not inherently following him out of fear for his strength. There are tons of real-life analogies to this situation that I could give you, but this example is a clear illustration. Suppose we have an old war general that is commanding an army. There are tons of strong, young soldiers within this army, most of which are probably more physically imposing than the general himself. Is the general now stronger than all of his young prime soldiers that follow him? Obviously not. They're probably
No, that's true. Just because you aren't in charge of someone doesn't mean you're more powerful than them. So that's definitely fair as it is. We're going to get into something interesting, which I do have a problem with, but as far as this is concerned, yeah, just because you're in charge of someone doesn't make you more powerful than them. So if you're making this argument, stop doing it. It's not helping.
following him for other
This video's
reasons,
gone
and the
on for way too
situation
long.
between Pain and the rest of the Akatsuki could easily be
Oh god.
similar. Another argument I have heard made is that Kakazu was cut during the war arc by some random tuning. For one, these random tuning are characters. These characters have no anti-feats in the series, so if they did scale to Kakazu, that just means they're also strong. This is ignoring the fact
I don't care about anti-feats, though. I care about what they're able to do. Like, what have they shown? Like, cool, they don't have any anti-feats, but they don't have any positive feats either, so that's irrelevant. The fact that he's also able to hit him, wrap him up for a bit. Like, these are all things that go against them, not just the cutting, which is something that's definitely worth looking into, which, again, would prove that my Dynamorph stance so far. The Dynamorph is up, he's near unhurtable, but when it's down, it's just a regular person as far as Naruto standards are concerned.
the fact that Kakazu is literally an Edo at this point as well, and I have already gone into depth as to why being an Edo severely nerfs their physical capabilities, and these same tuning were present during the fight with Kakazu and Hidan, yet they basically did nothing to either of them. There's also the argument that Hidan was the one to kill Yugito, which is not
No
supported
proof of it,
because
so
we
I'll
don't
ignore
see
it.
the fight. We only see the aftermath where Hidan had already used his ritual on Yugito. In order to perform that ritual, you would need the blood of Yugito, but it's ambiguous to who actually got the blood.
Have Hidan's eyebrows always looked like that? What's wrong with Hidan's eyebrows? They're messing with me. I don't like it.
Of Yugito
Kakazu's too, what the
so
hell?
we don't actually know who killed
What's with
him.
their
There were
eyebrows?
also two other statements that suggest Kakazu was even the one to kill Yugito, as Hidan admits he's the slowest member in the Akatsuki and might not be fast enough to tag Yugito. And there's
That's
also
fair.
the
That's
statement
fair.
from Hidan in the same panel where he says Kakazu is usually the doer of the two, which implies that Kakazu is usually the one who deals with the Biju. Even if you disregard all of this evidence and say Hidan was the one to kill Yugito, it is stated by Kakashi that Kakazu is the stronger of the pair, which means that Kakazu also would be able to kill Yugito, even if Hidan was the one who actually did it. The final and most ridiculous argument for why Kakazu sucks grapes is that he lost to Hashirama. I don't know why or how people think because Kakazu got beat up by Hashirama, he wouldn't be on the level of Biju. Because that implies losing to Hashirama is enough of an anti-feat to put a character below Biju level. The same Hashirama that beat the Susanoo-attired nine-tailed fox.
Again, if you're making this argument, then what are you doing? What are you doing? If you can make that argument with a straight face, then Noodle has all right to mock you at that point. Just because you lose to Hashirama doesn't mean anything. Madara lost to Hashirama. Madara stomped out all 5 Kage. Weakened Edo State. Madara stomped out Biju, the 9 Tails, the 8 Tails. So, if anything, being weaker than him would just mean you're to be at least relative to those characters, the 5 Kage and all that. So, if anything, if we're going off that line of thinking, you could say he was able to survive Hashirama, therefore he's relative to all 5 of the Kage. I don't think so, but bad arguments.
The same Hashirama that put the absolute whoop ass on Madara with the true 1,000 hands. Is Madara now below Biju level because he lost to Hashirama? I mean, he lost to him, right? Losing to Hashirama is not an anti-feat at all. Losing to Hashirama and not dying is actually probably a really good feat. I mean, how many people have actually survived a battle with him? So saying Kakazu loses to
Everyone I know
Hashirama
that's
is
fought
not
him.
bad at all, because literally everyone up until late in the war pretty much loses to him, including all of the Jinchuriki and Biju. Alright guys, that'll pretty much wrap up the video. There might be some smaller arguments that I missed, so if you notice one of them, make sure to leave a comment below to let me know what I forgot to cover. If you guys enjoyed,
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video there too. This is, I feel really bad. Usually I'm thinking to myself, what? 3 hours for a 30-minute video. Here I am doubling the time of his video. Anyway, I won't keep it up for too much longer. Next week I'm gonna try and tackle ranking all the Naruto characters. That's probably gonna be a 3-hour one, so I'll probably start a lot earlier than this. If you want to join in on that conversation, have fun. Hey, let's do it. Oh, we have someone in the chat. Hello there. But yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be the end of this video here. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the link below in the comments below. We put in my Discord in the comments below in case you don't see it, haven't seen it, and this will be Kenrock out. Goodbye.